As the pandemic continues on, of course, it has a significant impact on our general populations, but it also has an impact on those in our prison populations as well. And joining us now to speak about that continued impact, we're pleased to be joined once again by Chris Gautz, who is the spokesperson for the Michigan Department of Correction, with us on the MegaCast. Chris, thanks for being with us again today.
Thanks for having me, Tyler.
So the big talk right now in regards to the prison system is that we have a number of prisoners who are rejecting the vaccine, but the prison vaccination rate is actually doing pretty well in comparison to the state of Michigan, correct?
Yeah, right now we're at about 66% of all prisoners who have chosen to get the life-saving vaccine. And so we're very happy with that number. We want to see it continue to grow, which is why we work every day to communicate, to provide information to the prisoner population about the importance of the safe and effective vaccine. And actually right now we've been sending them information regarding the booster shots that are going to be available soon to those prisoners who are over the age of 65 or have some comorbidities that may allow them to fit into that category. And so starting to sort of prime the pump with that population so that they know why the vaccine is important, why the booster is important, and if they qualify. And so hopefully as many of them as possible will choose to get the booster once that becomes available.
As of September 17th, 66% of Michigan inmates were fully vaccinated. That is a quote from Chris, who we have on the show with us today. In comparison, 57% of Michigan residents were vaccinated against COVID-19, or listed as fully vaccinated against COVID-19 as of September 17th. And so while those numbers are great in comparison to the state of Michigan in terms of fully vaccinated inmates in Michigan's prisons, there seems to be more of a trickle now than in the recent months where it flowed in pretty quickly, these numbers. And that was similar to what we've seen out in the general population. In the prison population, and you mentioned there are some educational efforts that are going forth to try to better inform our prisoners about the safety and the efficacy of these vaccines that are available. But what are some of the common reasons or common rationale behind why some of these prisoners are more hesitant or are becoming much more hesitant toward getting vaccinated at this present time?
Well, I think it's, our prisons are really a microcosm of society. So just like in the general public, there are people who, no matter what you say, they're never going to get the vaccine. They either think it's a conspiracy or they have never supported vaccines. So we're going to have prisoners who have that same mindset. We're going to have prisoners, just like we have people in the public, who watch certain cable news shows, who read certain news sources, and they've been told that, some untruths about the vaccine, and they tend to, unfortunately, believe some of those sources. Sometimes they're hearing it from their family. Sometimes they're religious issues that they think that there are with the vaccines. So there's pretty much everything that you've heard in the public on your Facebook feeds or from your conversations with your family about why that they are hesitant about the vaccine. Our prisoners are having those same conversations, having those same issues, which is why we spend a lot of our time going back over the same things, educating, providing factual information about the vaccine and the importance of it, because having to remind them that they are living in a congregate setting, and as we saw last fall, that we had large numbers of cases around the state, and we had unfortunately 143 prisoners who have passed away due to the coronavirus. But when you look at it, only 3 of those prisoners have passed away since April, when all prisoners have had the ability to be fully vaccinated. And so it's proof to us that the vaccine works and it is effective, because our numbers of hospitalizations, serious illness and death have really fallen off a cliff since the vaccine has become available, and a large percentage of our population has taken it.
We're joined by Michigan Department of Corrections spokesperson Chris Gautz with us today on the MegaCast. And Chris, you mentioned last year's surge in the fall in COVID-19 cases in our prisons, and right now we're in the middle of a continuing surge, not only in the U.S. but here in the state of Michigan as well, with the Delta variant. Are our prison systems experiencing similar changes in numbers right now? Is there a surge also included in our Michigan prison system?
Thankfully, no. Knock on wood, that'll continue. Right now, there are only 28 active cases in the entire state, and about half of those are at our intake center, meaning that those are individuals who came to us from a county jail or from off the street, and so they're coming into us with it already. So our prevention measures, we've had a mask mandate in place since March of 2020 for all of our prisoners and all of our staff who work in the prisons. And so that measure alone is really helping to reduce things because masks do work, they are important, and we've had it mandated for the last 18 months, as well as a growing number of vaccines that our prisoners and our staff have taken, as well as all of our other general preventative measures in terms of social distancing, cohorting movement by housing unit, for visiting the chow hall, going to educational classes, college classes, all those kind of things are all done in cohorted movements so that if we do have an outbreak, it's contained to a very small subset of the population and not risking infecting an entire facility all at once.
We're joined by Chris Gautz. He is the spokesperson for the Michigan Department of Corrections with us on the MegaCast. And so 28 active cases, you said, of COVID-19 right now. Not a major surge across all of Michigan's prison systems. But should there be an outbreak, should there be cases that do pop up, what then happens in our prison systems to prevent these outbreaks from happening, to prevent further spread of the cases, and ultimately keep case numbers low as they are right now with just, as you said, 28 across the entire system?
Yeah, we had a really good test case with this back in February when we had experienced the British variant at one of our prisons in Ionia at the Bellamy Creek Correctional Facility. And as soon as we had that case sequenced and discovered that it was the British variant, we immediately sprang into action, had multiple calls with Department of Health and Human Services, and then immediately went to a system of daily testing of all prisoners and all staff every single day. All of the staff were wearing full PPE suits, N95 masks, gloves, gowns, and they were moving into a cohorted system of movement, really locking things down. And we were able to contain it, and it never spread outside of that facility, as well as limiting transfers and all the kind of things that we do internally. And then because we were worried about Delta a few weeks ago, we had another scare, but it ended up being a good test case for us because we started getting a bunch of results back and started seeing large clusters of positives at multiple prisons. And we immediately sprang into action and put that plan into place at all those prisons where we had these large clusters of cases where we were doing, again, daily testing, full PPE for all the staff, cohorted movements. And then we found what happened was that there was a national supplier who had an issue with the reagent material that they use for testing that went around to testing laboratories around the country where a lot of false positives were popping up. And we found out that we were using that same reagent, or the lab that we used was using that reagent. And as soon as we had the rest of those tests retested, we found that not a single one was positive and they were all negative. We were able to go back to our regular operation. But it showed us that in a very short amount of time, we were able to spring into action at all those facilities all at once and have the testing supplies there and ready if in fact we ended up having a case. So we know with experience that if we were to have the Delta variant pop up, we know how to handle it and we would be able to do it very quickly.
We're joined by Chris Gautz. He is the spokesperson for the Michigan Department of Corrections with us today on the MegaCast. And let's talk about when these inmates are now leaving these facilities. What precautions are put in place? What protocols are put in place to make sure that they are safely returning to the general population and aren't potentially taking COVID-19 out with them and potentially spreading it when they leave the prison system?
Sure. So every prisoner is going to be tested hours before they leave to make sure that they have a negative test. If they're going to be returning to, a family setting, if they're going to be going back with mom and dad or maybe their spouse, and they do test positive, they are able to be released. However, we will contact the county health department, and then we're not allowed to share their health status with the person that they're going back to. But certainly, we know that these are human beings, and they know that they're positive, and we know that they're not going to go and embrace their loved ones that are taking them in and risk potentially spreading it to them. But by law, we're not allowed to share that status with them unless the prisoner gives us that consent. And in many cases, they do let us share that, or they will share it with them themselves. And then they will make arrangements themselves to find some way to, quarantine them for the time period that they need to. But if they are going back to, say, a halfway house or some sort of congregate setting, we will not release them. We'll hold them back for a period of 10 to 14 days. And then they can be released because we're not going to risk infecting the prisoner and the folks that are in that setting. So there are a lot of things in place that we do to make sure they keep them safe. And then obviously, again, making sure that the county health department knows of all cases, so that way they can follow up with that individual specifically, and then do any sort of contact tracing that may need to be done on that end to keep the community safe.
We're joined by Chris Gautz. He is the spokesperson for the Michigan Department of Corrections with us today on the MegaCast. You can learn more about by watching the entire interview if you've just tuned in now. Later on today at civiccentertv.com/megacast. And Chris, let's talk about staffing at the Michigan prisons, because there's been a lot of staffing issues in a number of different industries across the state of Michigan and different state departments. What's the status of staffing in our prisons? Are they at a point where they are still able to operate normally with their current staffing? Is there a shortage? Or there need for more employees? What's the status?
Yeah, we need employees. So anyone who's listening or anyone who knows anyone that may be interested in a job with us, please reach out. You can go to michigan.gov/MDOC jobs, where we have about 800 corrections officers vacancies around the state. So we have a number of offerings and availability of officers. We're also in a very large need for nurses. We are hundreds of nurses down. In some facilities, we have 20 or 30 nursing vacancies. So especially some of our larger areas like Jackson, Ionia, Macomb, places like that are a real need for nurses and for corrections officers. And so we have a great training program for officers. We run academies every 3 months. A very competitive starting wage. As soon as your first day of training is your first day as a state employee. So the first day of your training, you're going to have full state benefits, and you're going to be receiving a paycheck and with some of the best, highest world-class training of any corrections department in the country. That's really recognized around the country for how well we train our staff. So it's a great job, and we have a lot of vacancies. And so right now we're looking. We're having another academy in October, so if anyone is interested, they can go right now on our website and apply, and they could potentially even get into this next academy. It's 8 weeks of classroom and physical training, and then 8 weeks of on-the-job training, and then you're fully immersed as an officer, and you're able to work those shifts on your own. So it's a great job, a great career. And the reason we have so many vacancies right now is because we had a huge hiring boom in the 80s. And when people tend to work for us, they tend to make it a career because they love it so much, and the lives that they can change and the difference that they can make in this job. And now we're seeing everyone retiring all at once. And so we're losing about 50 officers every single month due to retirements and promotions. So we have a large number that go out every year, and we hire about 700 to 800 people every year in terms of corrections officers. So we're always looking to fill those ranks, and every 3 months we have a new class going in. So if you're interested, please apply.
We're joined by Chris Gautz. He is the spokesperson for the Michigan Department of Corrections with us today on the MegaCast. And just a follow-up to that, when people do join the staff, or when people are on a daily basis going in and out of our prisons, because there are different people that are coming in and out each day, what protocols are the staff going through as they enter the prisons each day to prevent, like we talked about earlier, with prisoners leaving the system, bringing COVID out, preventing staff from bringing COVID into a situation that's already pretty contained and so far, at this moment we're at, relatively safe in comparison to the general population?
Yeah, so certainly we have testing available when we have suspected cases. Staff can be tested. All staff have a screening that they do every day that checks temperature, symptoms, things like that. And we really encourage our staff that if they are feeling sick, to not come to work. We had to really retrain ourselves and our staff because for years, we toughed it out. If someone was feeling sick, that they might have still gone into work because, they have that don't leave any man behind. If I don't come into work, it means somebody's getting mandated. I don't want to do that to my fellow colleague. I'm just going to power through, and I'm going to, come in and get the job done. We've had to really retrain ourselves and our staff to think about that if you are feeling sick, this is not the time to have that attitude. If you're sick, you need to stay home. If you're not feeling well, if you have a temperature, if you have any of the COVID symptoms, certainly we don't want you to come in. We want you to get tested somewhere offsite and then stay out if you're positive. And so we have protocols in place to do all those kind of things. And then, like I said before, we're one of probably the few employers that still has had a mask mandate in place the entire time throughout COVID. So our staff have to wear a mask when they're at the prison at all times, unless they're outside. They are allowed to take it off when they're out, or if they work in the yard or have some sort of assignment outside. But if they're indoors, they're always wearing that mask. And our staff do a very good job. They're very conscientious. They love their job. They don't want to get themselves sick. They don't want to get their colleagues sick, and they certainly don't want to get the prisoners sick. So everyone takes it very seriously, and they do a very good job on what is already a very difficult circumstance.
We're joined by Chris Gautz, the spokesperson for the Michigan Department of Corrections, with us today on the MegaCast. Chris, just another couple minutes with you before we'll say goodbye today. Anything else that would be important for our audience to know about what's going on within our prison system right now regarding COVID-19 or any other issues at this time?
Well, what we do a very good job on a lot of things, and certainly we've talked about before our recidivism rate, which is down to the lowest it's been in state history, sixth best in the country at 26.6%. But we're not satisfied with that. We recently announced a partnership with a technology nonprofit out of California called Recidivism, which is going to help us look at all of our statistics, all of our data, all of our analytics. They're going to be able to put that into a form that maybe we haven't seen before. All this data that we have collected on individual prisoners, on the efficacy of certain prisoner programming that we have, how at certain prisons, and then in the field, certain probation offices, even down to the probationer, the parole agent, all an amazing amount of metrics that we're going to be able to look at and see. Whereas before, maybe it just wasn't visualized or we couldn't see it based on the data that we had. They're going to be able to spot things and spot trends and look at things. And we're going to be able to take that information and do even better with our recidivism rate, but more importantly, having better outcomes for the prisoners who are in those programs, who are in those prisons, the parolees who are out trying to make a living, trying to do their best to not fall back into that criminal cycle. So all this technology and this partnership with the Recidivism, we see having really great benefits, not only for those individuals who are in our system, but also for the community at large, so that we have more taxpayer citizens rather than those coming back to prison and being tax burdened. So we really see this as a great investment, and we're really excited to start to see it bear fruit over the next months and years as we really roll this out and continue to drive that recidivism down even farther.
Chris, we appreciate your time. Thanks for being with us today.
Anytime. Thanks for having me.